Jesperi drops the gloves, and will Kovalchuk re-sign with the Canadiens? That and more in this week's Hockey Inside Out. Welcome to this week's Hockey Inside Out, which is brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal on Drummond Street, across from the Bell Centre. Your home away from home for Canadiens road games. Okay, with us today is me, of course, your beloved host, Adam Susser. We're going to switch up the sequencing here, you know. We're going to start with Joey Elias, the comedian, CBC Daybreak's Jessica Rusnak, and from the Montreal Gazette, Mr. Stu Cowan. During last Thursday's 4-1 win over the Flyers, that little whippersnapper Jesperi Kotkaniemi endeared himself even more to fans by fighting Philly's Robert Haig after a nasty check on teammate Ryan Poehling. Haig wasn't even able to swing a punch in Kotkaniemi's direction, or any direction for that matter, and his teammates were so proud of their little KK that they named him Player of the Game. Heartwarming, isn't it? What did you think of Kotkaniemi dropping the gloves in Philly?
Well, it reminded me of when I was a kid and my dad told me, if you ever get in a fight, make sure you throw the first punch. And I think maybe Kotkaniemi's dad gave him the same advice, because when he dropped him, he just started swinging, and the player didn't get a chance to really, he couldn't really do anything after that. So it's the kind of thing that his teammates loved it, but I don't think you want to see Jesperi Kotkaniemi doing that again, because if he picks on the wrong guy, it could be a bad ending. And if the other guy gets in the first punch, it could be a bad ending. But I asked him, he'd never been in a fight before in his life, not in the schoolyard, not anywhere.
That's not surprising, though.
Not anywhere. But it was quite impressive the way he handled himself. And I think it went a long way with his teammates, just to show that he's maturing, he's developing. And even Kotkaniemi said, it's not something I would have done last year. And it was coming to the defense of his teammate Ryan Poehling. So it wasn't just a random fight. He saw Ryan Poehling get hit into the boards face first. There was a second game that had happened, and he figured he had to do something. And there's people want fighting out of hockey. It's still part of the game. And that was an instance where I think Kotkaniemi coming to the defense of his teammate was a good thing.
And that's something that the Canadiens need, that when you see something happen to your teammate that's not okay, you want to show that you have their back. And for many years, I even go back to when Chara hit Max Pacioretty, and everyone just kind of stood there and looked at him, and everyone was wondering, why is no one trying to challenge Chara? I think Scott Gomez was one of the only guys who tried to go up to him, and he was up to his knees, so what was he really going to do? But
challenging Chara can be a frightening experience.
Yes, but at the same time, it goes a long way, the effort there. And Jesperi Kotkaniemi, he didn't like it. I think he didn't even really realize what was going on until he started throwing some of the punches, and a lot of the teammates really respected what he did.
It was funny because he told me he got a text from his grandmother who said, "Don't do that again."
My grandmother would have encouraged me to do that. I loved every second of it. I mean, here's a kid that, people were talking about, is he all that, all this, and then here he comes out, sticks up for his teammate, throws him, for first fight ever, he did pretty good. And you know what? He endeared himself to the fans, he endeared himself to his teammates even more so, and for all those people who think that fighting should be out of the game, it eventually will depart. I mean, I grew up in the era, I'm sure most of us, you can guarantee a fight or two every game. So to see this, and in fact that he stuck up for his teammates, I'm all for it. Should he do it again? Never. Never. I mean, the fact that he had to stick up for his teammate also says something.
I think it says a lot, because it was Ryan Poehling too, and it's these young kids that are going to grow up together on this team, and there's going to be a bonding between them, and I think that was a big bonding moment between Kotkaniemi and Poehling even mentioned that a couple of days later, said, if the reverse happens, I'm going to have to answer the bell for Kotkaniemi. So I think it's more as a team building thing. It was huge, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this team has a ton of character, and that is just another element of that character, I think. Ilya Kovalchuk has 4 goals and 4 assists in 8 games. He's already a fan favorite, no real surprise there. Do you think the Habs should make an effort to re-sign him for next season, or deal him before the trade deadline when his value is high?
It's early. There's no rush. It's only 8 games. And I think he came in here on a real adrenaline rush. Realizing your NHL career might be over, I think, is a big motivational factor. We'll see how that carries on moving forward. He's been a breath of fresh air on this team. He's somebody who can finally put the puck in the net on a regular basis. So It's early. I would wait. There's no rush. The trade deadline's not until February 24th. So if I'm Marc Bergevin, I'd wait a little bit, see how he does. And if he continues to play like this, which I wouldn't be surprised if he does, I think you have to think seriously about trying to re-sign him for 1 year and bringing him back next year. Because you look at all the games this season when the Canadiens have outshot the opposition by a wide margin and couldn't score. Well, here's a guy who can score.
I think that they have to deal him. I can't see him re-signing with the Montreal Canadiens. I think he's using this as a great opportunity to show that he still has something left in the tank and maybe go out and get a contract from another team. His family's in LA. They seem very comfortable there. Maybe he'd like to be closer to the West Coast. I can't see them relocating for a 1 year deal with the Canadiens. And they got a lot out of Ilya Kovalchuk. He was a guy that every team passed on. So why don't you trade him, see what you could get for him now when his value is really high, and cash in that way with him.
I think they got to wait and see if they're going to be buyers or sellers at the deadline. I mean, yeah, everybody's been talking about how Montreal is not in the playoffs, obviously, but I always bring up the Oakland A's. You know, they were so far out of it, and next thing you know, they're in the championship game. And with all these injuries, this bye week and then the All-Star break gives everybody who's injured a chance to come back with Kovalchuk. So, does Kovalchuk keep producing? Yes. You get to the trade deadline and you have to decide, are we going to go for it? Are we not? And then if they are going to go for it, I would keep him. I would wait till the offseason to re-sign or start negotiating with him, or at least before the draft.
I wouldn't wait too long because you look what happened with Radulov. I think Bergevin has to sit down with him and say, look, we gave you a chance. Nobody else really wanted you. We give you a chance to come back. Be honest with me. If we want to re-sign you for next season, will you sign here again?
I also hope that Bergevin, sorry to interrupt, learns his lesson from how he negotiated with Radulov
the first
and Markov.
Come, first serve, ridiculous.
Right. So maybe he's learned his lesson. Maybe, maybe everybody has learned something in this process.
Yeah, and then, keep talking about trading everybody for draft picks. Trade Thomas Tatar for draft picks. Trade this guy for draft picks. Habs have a lot of prospects already. They have 12 picks, I think it is, in this year's draft. They still need guys who can score. Next year, fans still want to see a team that can win some games. They still need some guys who can score. So I think if you can get Kovalchuk on a 1 year deal for a reasonable offer, and again, wait and see if he can continue to produce like that, I think it's worth it. And the thing is, the young guys on the team love him. He's so respected in the room. Nick Suzuki's talking about sitting in his locker, looking across and going, oh my God, that's Ilya Kovalchuk. I can't believe I'm in the same room as him. And so he's been a good influence on the team on the ice and off the ice. I think that goes a long way for a young team looking up to a veteran guy like that who has the skill and has the talent. And he's really enjoying playing in Montreal. He's made that clear. He loves the atmosphere at the Bell Center. He's never played in a real hockey market before. And he seems to really be, a lot of guys wilt under the pressure of Montreal. Other guys flourish and love the spotlight. He loves the spotlight.
But there's also nothing stopping Marc Bergevin from trading him at the deadline and signing him during the offseason as well. So that could be, a win-win if that's going to be the case if he wants to come back to Montreal.
I'd love to see him re-signed for next year. He fits in so well with the hardworking team culture that the Canadiens have. He loves it here in Montreal. And he's also the caliber of superstar that if someone is going to be able to play later on in the career, it's going to be a guy of that talent. He scores goals that I can't remember someone in a Canadiens uniform being able to score goals like that. We've needed offensive talent for that. And I really believe he's going to have another year or two left in him where he'll be able to still produce. So I'd love to see him.
The other thing is fans love him.
Yes.
And it's a business. And Jeff Molson has to sell tickets
Exactly.
too. And fans love skilled players like Kovalchuk.
Listen, I'm still getting over the Radulov thing. I want him to make this right.
I'm still getting over Larry Robinson going to the Kings.
With the Canadiens' chances of making the playoffs still very unlikely, do you think Marc Bergevin will make some sort of move before the trade deadline?
Yeah, he's going to do something. But again, the trade deadline's not till February 24th. And when they come back from this break, they need to go on a roll. Like, they need to win 4 or 5 in a row to get back, any hope of getting back in this playoff picture. If, I think it's 14 games they have left before the trade deadline. If they go 4-4 in their first 8, I mean, they're going to be out of it. And that's when Bergevin's got to start listening. And he will do, he can't just do nothing. He will do something. He talks about this reset. He's going to stick to his plan moving forward. He said he's not going to listen to offers for Carey Price or Shea Weber. Maybe Jeff Petry's in the same boat as that. So he's gonna tinker here and there. Nate Thompson's a guy that a team on a playoff drive might want to pick up, veteran guys like that. But he'll be active before the trade deadline.
I think it's going to be really interesting the next 2 weeks or so to see what the Canadiens are able to do and how will that affect Marc Bergevin. Is he going to go all in and look at potentially how they were last year, how they just missed the playoffs, and they're going to say, let's go on another run like that and see what we can do? Or is it just really unattainable to make the playoffs at that point and trade away some guys and see what he can get back and start building this team for next year?
I think I think he's going to make a move. I mean, one way or another, there's going to be changes. I think one element is, does Gallagher come back this season from the concussion? Is he healthy enough? I think his well-being may or may not sway Bergevin to go out and get another player a la Gallagher type if Brendan Gallagher does not come back this year due to concussions. Tatar, you talk about people that are other teams may be interested. Here's a guy who's, I believe, a free agent after this year and putting up some good numbers. Why wouldn't a team on a run, want a player like that?
Why wouldn't
Well,
Tatar's got
Tatar has one more. Tatar has one more year left, which is why I wouldn't be in a rush to trade him.
I wouldn't move him at all.
He just turned 29. He's your leading scorer on the team, and again, as I said, next year you still need guys who can play and score goals. I mean, if next year, if you realize you're not going to re-sign him, you don't want to, you can trade him at the deadline next year. I don't see why there would be a rush to deal a guy like Tatar now when you have so many picks already for next year. You have so many young prospects coming up. You need guys who can play in the NHL now. And we're talking about the playoffs. Somebody say playoffs, but Marc Bergevin hasn't given up on the playoffs, and I commend them for that, because we were just talking before the show about how much fun the city of Montreal is when the Canadiens are in the playoffs, and how much it sort of sucks when they're not. It's good for businesses like this place. It's good for everything when the Habs are in the playoffs. It's good for a young team to experience winning and a playoff drive. So tanking with a young team, to me, doesn't make sense, because you're creating a losing environment for young guys like Suzuki and Poehling. You don't want that. You want them to still, even if they don't make the playoffs, you want them fighting for it as long as they can. They're going to learn more that way than just tanking games.
So what about the backup goalie situation then?
Well, I think what we're going to see is the games that Carey Price can't play. I wouldn't be surprised if they call up Primo to play 4 or 5 games down the rest of the way. I don't know if Charlie Lindgren's going to get another start. I think maybe not. I don't know how much Marc Bergevin would be willing to give up for yet another backup. Keith Kincaid can't stop a puck in Laval now, and he's a lost cause. But we'll see how many games they can play. I still think it was a mistake that Claude Julien didn't start Carey Price in that game against Chicago. That's the only game they lost of the last 5. And right now Carey Price is probably sitting on a beach somewhere. He had lots of time for rest. I think that was a mistake. I think Julien should have started him in that game. And if they won that game, now it's another 2 points for 5 games in a row. I think it's sort of they were on that roll, and it sort of was a little bit of a bump on the road.
A little speed bump.
Okay, the first half of the show has been brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal on Drummond Street. That's the one across from the Bell Center. They do holiday parties and corporate events. What are your first impressions of Marco Scandella, and do you think the team should try and re-sign him?
My first impression was NDG went crazy.
Memesso sub sales went up.
I went down to Memesso's the next day just to wish them, a mazel tov, and they were like over the moon. Listen, if you want to keep a guy, he hasn't. Listen, has he made his mark? Not really. He's gone unnoticed, which is good. Which means he hasn't made that many mistakes in my book. He's a big, solid defenseman. He's from here. He was excited, so excited that he actually, could have bought a plane ticket, but he drove himself from Buffalo to Montreal. So yeah, there's no harm in re-signing him, just for, sell some hometown tickets. And yeah, maybe we get every time the Habs win next season or Scandella scores, there's 2 for 1 at Memesso's.
Oh, I like that idea. Let's get that in the works. Yeah. I agree. I think that Marco Scandella has fit in well with this team. That's something that the Canadiens needed, a veteran defenseman on this team to help them out. And it's been paying off so far. And that's another thing that people always talk about with the Canadiens is that why is there not enough local talent? Well, there's a local guy here, a guy from NDG on the team. So I think that they should keep him around.
If he's going to stay, he'll have to take a pay cut, because I think he's making about $5 million now on the contract he has. The thing about Scandella, that a lot of games you don't notice him, which is good. if you're playing on the third, you're 4, 5, 6 defensemen and you're not noticed, that's a good thing. But I wouldn't be surprised if they fall out if Bergevin does maybe move him, because you got Romanov coming next year, it looks like, and I don't know what their defense situation is going to be as far as spots. The Jeff Petrie situation, I don't think they're going to trade Petrie, but you never know. So I think that's another one Bergevin is going to take his time with. But you're right. I think having, you were talking earlier, Kovalchuk wanting to play here. And here's another guy who, Candela, he just wants to play here. He was over the moon when he first came here. His mother was in tears in the stands, and watching the game. She watched her brother win a Stanley Cup with the Canadiens. Now she's watching her son play with them. So I would, if Bergevin, I think you have to think seriously about bringing him back. But I think there's a lot of other things that are going to come into place that will make the decision for him as to whether he keeps Candela or not.
Stu, you talked about this earlier on in the show. I'll ask the panel, but you can elaborate. Do you think Claude Julien made a mistake by not starting Carey Price during the game against Chicago last week? It turned out to be the only game out of the last 5 games that they did lose.
I agree with Stu's point that was a must. Right now, they are in the situation that every game is a must win. And who's going to give you that win? It would be Carey Price, because you don't really have a backup goaltender right now. And especially the timing of it, that he had a full week afterwards to recover from it, from the season and all that. So, yes, he definitely should have played Carey Price. It's not like he's never played back-to-backs before.
I will atone for my mistakes in previous segments here, where I've said time management for Price is key. Not in this situation. When you do, again, I hate to just agree, because it just makes, don't people want to go Kotkaniemi everywhere, But yeah, with the fact that he's now on vacation, he's not going to the All-Star game, he's got that break, they should have played him back-to-back, and we'll see. The only thing I will say is, if the Montreal Canadiens miss the playoffs by 1 or 2 points, wow, would I not want to be anybody that was in goal that game. Because if that's the 2 points that keeps them out, it's going to be a long summer for Claude Julien.
Yeah, there's so many, when you look back, so many different things that could happen. If the penalty kill was better, if this was better. I mean, I understand. I think Julien wanted to give Charlie Lindgren another shot. I think he felt he earned another shot with the performance he had the previous game. Even though he lost, he played very well. And he was just sort of overmatched against the Blackhawks, and that's why I think they'll be reluctant to put him back in. So I think we might see Primo come up and make a couple of starts down this last part of the stretch. But with Carey Price, again, if it wasn't the bye week coming up, I could see him sitting him, because at some point you need to give him a night off. But I just think with the bye week, it didn't make sense. I think they should have played him and then have him sit on the beach now.
All right, well, that is all for this week's show, which has been brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal on Drummond Street, across from the Bell Centre, where you can wait out the traffic and enjoy their $10 specials after every Canadiens game. Do you think Marc Bergevin should sign or deal Ilya Kovalchuk before the trade deadline? Let us know in the comments section below. My name is Adam Susser, and we'll see you back here next Thursday.